Hey everyone, thank you for joining me on this week's episode of The Kitchen. This is, excuse me, one of my favorite weeks for April. So this week in my hometown, we're very historical. We're in Lexington, Massachusetts, and we celebrate Patriots Day. And if you live outside of Lexington or Massachusetts for sure, you may not know that this is a major holiday, and which is why we always run the Boston Marathon on a Monday as opposed to weekends where many other of the marathon majors are held. So it's a great week. I remember when I had gone off to college in New York and I was like, it's Patriots Day. People were like, who? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, my town is closed. My state is closed on Patriots Day. There's parades, there's reenactments and pancake breakfasts, and the marathon is run, and the Red Sox play, and we always beat the Yankees, and that's where usually the conversation went sideways. But nonetheless, it is a big day, and I really enjoy, it's a sign of spring to me, but it's also a pretty inspirational week because I've always say when I talk about it, I go to the reenactment and we have this kind of, our Massachusetts Avenue comes through my town center and it winds to or forks to a battlefield, which is where Shot Heard Around the World takes place. And as it was pointed out to me, which I know, but as I was being like, oh, it's so inspirational, one of my friends was like, yay, but we lost that battle, right? Yes, we did, but we won the war. So my point exactly is that every time I see this reenactment, it's just these, I don't know, hundreds of British soldiers come marching up Massachusetts Avenue to meet the Minutemen who have just like run to their homes and grabbed their stuff and they're going to stand their ground. And they're at this battlefield, kind of like ragtag, but you know, they don't have matching uniforms. They're not standing in columns. They don't really, have the presence that the British Army has. It's overwhelming. And I stand there and I watch this reenactment every year, which takes place at 10 to 6 in the morning. They do it in, when it actually happened. And it really is just overpowering how, and I always say like, maybe this is where we Americans are like root for the underdog, because the Minutemen standing their ground were clearly the underdog. They did in fact lose that battle, but we did go on and, over the next few days, people came from all over the state, stood their ground. We did win the war against the British. And so it's always inspirational to me to see what other people stood for and stood up for. And the same goes for the marathon. There's always a story. There's always some fantastic reasons why and why people do stuff. And then of course I'm just inspired because people are just dropping like 420 miles for, consistently on the Boston course, which is a challenging course. So it's a very inspirational week to me. Now, you might say, Anne, what does all of this have to do with the kitchen? Well, again, I come back to my table where we gather to tell stories. And I always say, if we're going to do something, like, it better be a good story. At least what's the point, right? So a lot of these are excellent stories. I do love history stories. And I do love, creating like adventures. I enjoy creating recipes, and the ones that don't work out, those are the good stories, right? And everybody remembers the holiday where, something, didn't work out. And, it was kind of funny. Time, right? You have tragedy plus time as the key factor equals comedy. Plus time is always important. So that's what it has to do with the kitchen, of where we gather, where we tell our stories. There are inspirational things throughout our day, throughout our week, throughout our lives. And I wanted to just go on and talk about those things that happen in my hometown and offer up to everybody else, like, hey, what could potentially be inspirational in your world today? It might just be making a seasonal salad, right? It's spring, we've got all the vegetables out. Like maybe you'll be inspired and be like, oh my God, I saw asparagus and lemon. Like I'm gonna do something kind of cool with that. You might have seen, I'm getting a lot of calls for like, hey Ann, do you coach running? Yes, I do. But we've got marathon fever now. So when we run Boston around here, I get a lot of calls in the weeks after to be like, hey, I'm going to start a running program and can you help me and all of that stuff. So sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes not. But nonetheless, maybe you're inspired and maybe it takes you into a running plan. Maybe it takes you into a hiking plan or just getting out for a walk. So what can be inspiring to you this week is my message coming to you live from the kitchen.